This book, honestly, is a dog. Hey everybody, it's me. It's almost 10. I'm about to go to bed, but I just got done reading a book tonight. Part of the reason why, because it's so bad that I've been ruminating and thinking about it and what I want to say. Because I've always had a problem with this philosophy since probably my early 20s. In terms of spirituality, if you want to loosely apply that term, this really is the worst book I own. And not because of it being some sort of evil text. I think I will probably be one of the first people to go through and critique this book, this work, that's not of an Abrahamic faith. This book, honestly, is a dog turd. If you are a decent person, that is, you have a sense of care for your neighbor and are not just a horrifyingly selfish monster, you will probably think the same thing. This book is bad, and I can't wait to get into this further. Wow, we time traveled. So anyways, yeah, this book is bad. I've had problems with it for a long time. Finally read it front to back. I really can only go in and kind of make content on like the first half of this book, because the second half of it is just pretty much ritual work, incantations, how to perform certain rituals, so on and so forth. But I figured I'd talk about the book before I ever got into it, because I realized that was right after I finished it. I was obviously frothing at the mouth in anger. So this came out around the same time as like the spiritual revolution in the Western world, especially in the United States. I want to say it came out and got published in like the late 60s. One interesting thing I'll note, because again, this isn't literally Satan worship, this is atheistic, using a symbol, I guess. And what I found interesting about it was not only because I thought originally this text was just going to criticize Christianity, which is whatever, but not only was it criticizing Christianity, it was also criticizing all of the movements that people were branching into at the time when the Western world began taking an interest in things like Hinduism, Buddhism, and all these other Eastern philosophies, which I am admittedly partial to. At least Buddhism. I mean, I've meditated and prayed in Buddhist temples before, but I was able to set that aside and read that still. And he even goes on to criticize like just general magic practitioners, occultists, I guess loosely in the pagan sphere of things, which, seeing a person that was not religious criticize all these different things was admittedly refreshing. Because typically all I'm ever seeing when that stuff is criticized is it being a very theistic person, usually of an Abrahamic faith, and usually Christianity. I can't get behind this book again because it is extremely hedonistic in its philosophy. It also is very keen towards social Darwinism, which is very apparent within like the first 40 pages of the read. Basically, things such as the strong will inherit wealth, the weak will die. I don't think it's exactly said like that, but it's pretty freaking close. Now, in my research after finishing the book and while reading the book, I've come to learn that Anton LaVey has basically come out to say that LaVeyan Satanism is basically Ayn Rand's philosophy dressed up in talk of Satan, ritual work, ceremony, etc. But another thing I found, actually it was really funny because my girlfriend was really the first to point it out. She's like, this man must have read Nietzsche. And I started researching it that same night, And lo and behold, it's actually reported that this book right here not only was inspired by Nietzsche, but also is said to plagiarize Nietzsche. But not only that, it's also said to plagiarize Atlas Shrugged, especially in its 9 rules. And also, here's this funny thing that I found independently of my own. There are a lot of times in this book, I was like, the way that the speech in this book is being used is kind of concerning to me, because I was like, man, this is kind of tipping its hand onto fascism. Like, I feel like if you tweaked some themes a little bit, and put it in more of like a political framework, this would have been a political manifesto from like a century ago. Now, I looked it up further, and they're also saying that this book is plagiarizing a very infamous book called Might is Right, which also heavily caters to social Darwinism. And it's a book that's sort of shrouded in a little mystery, because I still think that we really don't know who penned the book, because the author went under a pseudonym. So, they believe it to be some type of poet and also a political activist. But again, that work is called Might is Right. I believe it was published in 1890, and I think it was like one of the first big publications of like a fascist racial worldview, which I guess would be kind of concerning why that would have made its way into this book. But again, in my eyes, there's really nothing to be gleaned out of the Satanic Bible if you're not already a very extremely selfish person. A lot of it admittedly reads as like very edginess, and unfortunately, it's not bad in the fact that it's just horrifyingly evil. It's not bad in the fact that it's poorly written per se, which would make someone stop reading it. For me, it's one of those things where it's so bad I can't look away from. And that the edginess and just the very, in my eyes, juvenile worldview and the lack of self-awareness, it keeps my eyes glued to the pages. So from like a spiritual perspective, there's really nothing to glean from this book. There's nothing to gain from it. But I still think it would be worth a read if you're interested in maybe like the history of American counterculture or something. But furthermore, eventually I will start criticizing this book. But I just kind of wanted to give my general thoughts on it first.